Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to ShopTalk. Hey, Glen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks.
Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. I'm joined as always by my co-host Glenn. How you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing well, Dave.
Good to hear it. Now, we're also going to be joined by Rob, who is a security expert and chief of security at some large power place here in North America that will remain nameless because he's just here as a friend to let us know. Rob's from our same hometown and happens to be this chief cybersecurity guy at the big place. So we're going to ask him all the things that could go wrong and what happens when they do go wrong. Rob, how are you doing?
I am excellent. Actually thrilled to be on the show. Glad I could join you tonight.
All right. Well, let me jump right into some questions for you. So do you lie awake at night worrying about cyber attacks as a realistic manifestation other than being your job? Or do you think, the squirrel chewing through the power line is a bigger risk?
That's a great question. I think in general, you have to be a paranoid person to work in cybersecurity, so it does inherently keep you up at night. But the reality is, utilities like the one I work at have had decades of experience in dealing with all sorts of physical threats, weather, equipment failures, proverbial squirrel attacks. And we got a lot of playbooks for dealing with them. The challenge for us, of course, is cybersecurity and cyber threats are different. They're asymmetric. They can be invisible until it's too late. They could be coordinated across multiple systems. So it's newish for us. When you talk about how long we've been making electricity, cyber threats have really only been a thing, for a relatively short period of that time.
I'd like to say my question was a subtle reference to that, but no, it wasn't. So how often, you must get port scans by the 1,000 per day of just, defense probes, but how often do you think state actors are actually actively trying to infiltrate your networks?
We see continuous network probing across all of our exposed services and sort of public-facing websites, email infrastructure. Most of it's low-level scanning, sort of script kiddie things, automated bots looking for vulnerabilities. And this, we kind of consider background noise. It's constant, and our defenses are well-tuned to filter it out and block it. We also have things like geo-blocking. Fortunately, our customer base is localized, so, it's not likely we would have customers needing to access our infrastructure from some strange foreign country. So that does keep down a lot of the noise. But beyond that, there are targeted attempts for sure. They're less frequent, but often more sophisticated.
So you say less frequent. So, you've got all kinds of stuff that's just happening all the time in terms of people poking around and that sort of stuff.
Yep.
These more serious attempts are less frequent. Any idea of how frequent is less frequent? Is that weekly or monthly or twice a year?
Yeah. How less frequent? Enough that I keep a full-time team fairly busy.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Right.
So if you were making a movie, about North Korea somehow, regardless of how realistic it is, successfully infiltrating the industrial control networks of the power grid, what is the worst that could be done if you reduce it to absurdity and say, I suppose you could overflow dams and things like that, but what else could be done with the power grid to cause a lasting outage that wouldn't be recoverable in days, but rather weeks or months?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if either of you watched the show 24.
Seen it.
Maybe I'm dating myself, but there was a scene where the guy, he says, "Oh, the bad guys, they've broached our firewall, and now they have control of the North American grid." Not the case, right? The North American grid, while it's interconnected, clearly from a power distribution perspective, every region, every utility has its own independent systems. So any attacks that would happen would be localized to the region of that utility. A recent one that happened in our own backyard recently is Nova Scotia Power. Very publicly had a ransomware event earlier this year. In that case, they didn't get into their control systems. They didn't actually shut down the grid, but the impact was pretty significant. They got into their billing systems. They got customer data. That erodes public trust. That brings in a lot of questions from, their regulators and the government. And in their case, their automated systems for reading power meters, the ones that you'd have outside your house, for example, they were taken down and did not function for over 3 months. So they went for like 3 months without being able to issue a single bill.
Right.
That is pretty impactful on any organization. Imagine if you have no income coming in for 3 months, that's going to be a challenge. And they actually had to send out people to manually read these meters because of that impact.
Right.
You mentioned water. Water's an interesting one. My company's very big in hydropower, so we have a lot of dams and water control as well. There have been instances, even this year in April, hydroelectric dam in Norway got compromised by some threat actors, and they remotely opened up a discharge valve and caused a very significant flood. It wasn't catastrophic. It didn't damage any property, but, that threat is there. It is real.
So does your team have a cool name like Grid Avengers or Watt Warriors, or just 3 guys in a closet named Michael, Dave, and Chris?
Yeah, Wattage Warriors, actually. I do like that one. I'm going to have to try to sell that internally. No, in reality, our team operates, more like a well-oiled incident response unit than a comic book squad.
Right.
I do like the idea of the name. Really, we're a mix of analysts. We've got engineers. We've got threat hunters, and they understand the operational, and technical nuances.
What's the size of your team, Rob?
It has grown tremendously. I've been with the organization for a little over 4 years, and we have now just over 50 people working in a variety of areas. And we cover soup to nuts. Our cybersecurity, it is completely managed internally for our organization.
So have you ever caught anybody that's made it far enough to set off alarms? Or you're aware of any incidents in the industry lately where people actually did make it in and were caught rather than being caught in the attempt?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how deep into the environment you're talking about. Every large company certainly is going to deal with regular security incidents. It's really just a part of working in today's threat landscape. In practice, most intrusion attempts will get detected early. They will get stopped. When you look at the way we've designed our environment, we have multiple layers. We have, the internet connects to our business systems. The business systems connect to internal systems. Those internal, it's the elbows connected to the wrist bone type of a thing. So it's not like all of our high importance, high criticality systems are close to the internet or exposed. So we have lots of opportunity to detect and stop malicious behavior before it gets into those really critical systems. Not to say it can't happen. Like I mentioned Nova Scotia Power, they actually reported a dwell time. That's how long between when they get into the environment and get a foothold and the time that they're discovered. That was 37 days in that case. So they were moving around the environment for 37 days where they were detected. A lot of it depends on how noisy these guys are. So what they will do is sort of work low and slow and sort of set up a whole bunch of triggers and then fire them off all at once. And when that happens, you definitely know what happens. But when you look at industry stats, I'm not talking utility, but broader cybersecurity enterprises, that dwell time, it can be hundreds of days in some cases. So,
and I'm sure some ultimately go undetected, so you have infinite days, effectively.
Well, that's just it. You don't know what you don't know.
Now, are most of your systems, not all systems, but the industrial control systems in a power utility, are they air-gapped, or can you log into the PLC from home if you need to change the speed of the centrifuge or whatever you're doing?
The shorter answer is it depends. I know that's sort of a Weasley response, but in a big vertically integrated utility like ours, we have a real mix of different types of environments, different ages of equipment, and each of those really has different connectivity and different risk profiles. So, our most critical operational systems, the ones used for generation control, the ones used to sort of control our transmission networks, those are isolated and heavily segmented. They are not accessible from the public internet. They're protected by multiple layers of access control, multiple redundant controls, monitoring, and physical security. But not every system is air-gapped. A lot of business critical systems and even support systems, have to be on our networks. They require connectivity. We need to be able to move data. We need to be able to operate it as a business, and these things require connections. Interestingly, one of the more unique tools we see fairly common in the utility space that you and the viewers here might not be familiar with is something referred to as a data diode. Is that something you're aware of, or?
No, I'm guessing from context, but explain what it is.
Sure. These were originally developed by the military and for intelligence applications by certain Middle East countries who will remain unnamed. But they're hardware devices that enforce one-way data flow. So you can almost imagine if you have sort of a transmit and receive pair on a network cable, you literally cut the receive pair and replace the transmit pair with like an opto-isolated connection. So these will let you push data out of one network, usually using a protocol like UDP because you don't have a handshake, right. So you need to do that. But nothing physically can flow back in. It's not rules-based. It's not a configuration setting that allows that one-way communication. It is, inherent in the hardware. So these are ideal for protecting critical systems that need to get data out, say, to provide support for business services. But you don't want any sort of control ever getting back in.
Yeah, I've never seen that. That's kind of cool. For the average viewer out there, what should they understand about critical infrastructure security that nobody really has thought about in the public, in the public consciousness? We all have our little fears about foreign state actors coming in, but what's the big thing that you wish you didn't know now that you didn't know then?
One of the most important things to understand about critical infrastructure security is it's not about stopping attacks. It's about surviving them. The public often imagines, I think, that cybersecurity, it's like a digital fortress. It's all about setting up these big walls and keeping the bad guys out at all times. The problem with that is you have to be successful 100% of the time. The standard joke in cybersecurity is you as a defender need to be right every time. The attacker only needs to be right once.
Right.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, really the name of the game is resilience. We need to design our environments and our systems to fail gracefully, to be able to recover quickly, and to maintain essential services even when we're under duress or under attack. So we don't just build walls. We plan for cyber attacks, just like I was talking at the beginning about, fires and floods and things that utilities are great with dealing with. We plan for cyber attacks, and so we do, regular exercises to test them. We have plans in place to plan for like failed communication, even to the point of saying, we need to be able to get a helicopter out to a remote data center to do something if the comm links are down. So, it's more complicated than you think. It's just not a matter of building big walls and saying, my job is done.
Right. So I got a random AC power question for you since you're an engineer.
Let's shoot. Yeah.
I've got Insteon in my house, the home automation network.
Yeah.
And so it does over power line signaling and it does mesh Wi-Fi node to node. Now, since I installed Wi-Fi 7, I'm getting a huge amount of interference on whatever mesh network it uses, and so it's relying more on the power line side, and I'm finding it very unreliable. Now, I realize I don't have a phase coupler in my setup, so there's two phases in the house, at least, and they're not joined in mine. So I got that box. But my question is, I have three 200-amp panels that all go to central lugs, but it will backfeed enough, I assume, to go to the other panels, or do I need to phase couple each panel? There's no diodes or anything, not that would help on AC, but...
Yeah, usually, I don't know many people with multiple panels in their house who have installed those technologies. Typically, a phase coupler in one panel is adequate. I'm assuming all of your power is provided from a single load or a single transformer. it comes in. You
Yeah,
don't
I
have like
assume.
multiple lines coming into your house because they will trap out that RF. So, that's why you don't have to worry about those, like say you don't have to worry about your signals going to your neighbor's house.
Right.
Because they're trapped out typically by the transformer itself.
Okay.
But within your house, you shouldn't really need to couple them. It wouldn't hurt.
I'll see how I do after the one, I guess, and see if it solves the problem.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, Dave, you asked him that question since you're an electrical engineer. So tell us, Rob, so we're three boys from Regina. How does Rob from Regina make his transition to being some cybersecurity dude for some company in Canada?
Oh, that's a journey. It's one of the common questions we ask when we're talking to people. How did you get into cybersecurity? Because let's be honest, it's a relatively new field. When we were graduating, from high school, it's not like people were saying, I want to grow up and be in cybersecurity, because there wasn't such a thing. So
Chicks and cash are, so yeah.
so they tell me. I went to electrical engineering, engineering in Ontario, and ended up in electrical engineering because I failed chemistry in first year, so it was the only option I had. Stay in school, kids. But I have spent my entire career working for power utilities. So I started as a control system engineer, working as a field protection control engineer, doing maintenance work, got into design. So I was designing control systems for power plants. And then along the way, a lot of concerns came about, are these really secure? We started to use a lot of sort of commercial off-the-shelf IT type technology in our process control networks, and so things were flagged as an industry. A lot of it actually came about the big blackout that happened on the East Coast.
The ice storm?
No, this was a blackout caused by a system cascade failure that caused like where I was in Ontario at the time, and we had 3-day outages actually at some points, but ultimately it was caused one of the causes, there was a whole bunch of compounding causes, but one was due to systems, specifically computer systems used to manage the grid. And sort of the realization that happened at that time was, well, if something like this could happen by accident, what would happen if somebody actually, tried to do something maliciously with these systems? And so hence sort of the focus on cybersecurity in the electric utility space was born. So that's when I sort of pivoted from focusing on control system design to, hey, how do I protect this stuff?
And this is this pre-Y2K?
Post Y2K,
just shortly after? It is, yeah.
So if you had to cast a movie, my North Korean screenplay that I'm working on, who's going to play you?
Oh, man. Let's see. Who would I want to play me?
Let's go with Jason Statham. Okay.
No, I'll be age appropriate here. Let's go with Jeff Bridges. Sort of a mix of the dude and Kevin Flynn from Tron. Right? Somebody who's sort of got that calm authority, a bit of grit, a sense of humor, that seen it, done it energy. Plus he's got a great beard.
Yeah, that's true. I've done the math on that. I thought if somebody made a movie out of my book, which I think is incredibly unlikely, who would I want ideally? And of course, you want like Daniel Day-Lewis, but he's probably too old now.
Yeah.
So I would go with Jamie Foxx.
Okay. I can see that.
Do it.
That would work. Yeah.
So what else we got here? What's the scariest vulnerability that you've had to patch where you found it and then said, holy crap, if they would have known about this, I'm so glad they didn't? That could be hypothetical.
Oh, well, okay.
Don't let reality be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will say one of the vulnerabilities that had the most effort for us was the Oh, now I'm drawing a complete blank. You're going to have to edit this out. The big JavaScript vulnerability.
Oh, sorry.
The JavaScript vulnerability, Log4j. So
Okay, yeah.
So one of the most
It was Java, not JavaScript.
Java. So one of the most challenging vulnerabilities we had to deal with was Log4j, not because of the specific vulnerability or the risk that it posed, that was real, but the fact that it's something that is embedded into so many systems and devices downstream. So when you're trying to remediate something like that, you may have an embedded system that you're using somewhere in your environment, and they've used that Log4j library, and you can't just go and patch it. You have to wait for the vendor to provide an update, and in some cases that took 2-3 years. So you had to rely on other controls in order to protect you against it. So it's frustrating. It's sort of like that long tail of the remediation cycle. There are probably still, like, if you were to query cybersecurity professionals today, there were probably still people who have not eliminated that Log4j vulnerability from their environment. Like it's still kicking around.
Right.
But the ones I think that really make us stand up and go, what? Are things involving, firewalls. Anytime there's a newly announced, there's a 0-day on brand X firewall, you're immediately saying, do we have any of those in our environment? The second is anything related to identity and access management systems, because again, those are the keys to the kingdom. If there's a vulnerability on those that's being exploited, that's one that you've got to panic and patch right away. And then, of course, things with our industrial control systems. And like I said, embedded systems are the worst to deal with, unlike typical IT environments where you can deploy things relatively rapidly in an emergency. When you're talking about systems that are literally controlling a generator or a transmission environment, you can't just throw in the latest version. You've got to go through a whole process of validation, engineering, in some cases recommissioning equipment to make sure everything is functioning properly and that patch doesn't break anything. Because the risks are pretty significant. The last thing you want to do is apply a patch and have it cause a critical system to not function properly.
Right. Speaking of the access control, I remember I was in I know of a meeting long ago where some 3-letter agencies like the NSA or CIA or FBI was at Microsoft, and they were talking to the people at Microsoft. And the question was effectively, what if a foreign national got a job on the operating system team? What's to prevent them from checking a backdoor into the operating system? And of course, there are multiple layers of detecting malicious check-ins and review process and everything else. But the reality is a dedicated person that works there with a badge and access to the network can do a great deal of damage. And I assume that's one of your biggest threats, is that you have people come in and exploit it from the inside. If they really wanted to do that kind of thing, it's probably easier than breaking in, right?
100%. Insider threat is one of the most difficult risks to manage for any organization.
Right.
And not because they're common, but because, like you were saying, they bypass all of those traditional defenses that we have in place. Somebody who's got legitimate access, whether it's physical or digital, has the potential to cause real harm, if their intention shifts or gets influenced or they get compromised. And, that's why we treat insider risk as sort of its own category and not just a subset of the other external threats. I know there is a big focus in critical infrastructure on insider threat. We use a combination of technical controls, process discipline, and culture building to help mitigate that. Technically, we have very strongly enforced role-based access controls, and we really enforce the principle of least privileges. So we only give access to people, to systems that they really need access to. And nothing more than that. We log and audit administrative access on a regular basis. We segment our systems so that no single person could make, sort of broad sweeping changes without some sort of overnight. But from a process perspective, we do, especially for new hires, very extensive background checks when we're hiring people into security sensitive roles. People who have either elevated access or are going to be working on critical systems in our environment. And for even existing employees, we do, regular periodic rescreenings to make sure that nothing has changed that could introduce new risk. And that's not really about mistrust. It's really about doing our due diligence to maintain confidence that those people who are operating those systems are trustable. So It's kind of like, I'll give you the example. Managing insider threats is like securing your fridge, right? You could lock the door, you could install a camera, you can put on a sign that says, "Do not eat my lunch," but if somebody else has the key and they're hungry and they want that leftover lasagna that you stuck in there, it's not going to be there when you want to go eat your lunch. So,
years ago, this is kind of unrelated, but it's a security issue because my father-in-law was head of security for IBM in Canada, and he would worry about data centers and stuff at the end of his career. But in the earlier parts of his career, it was more not loss prevention, but, general corporate security stuff. And he was explaining there's a progression of people in morality in the world. He's like, if you're walking down the hallway and there's a $20 bill on the floor, some people will just pick it up and some people will try to find the owner. And now you're walking down the hall and that bill is just on the threshold of somebody's office. What do you do now? Well, some people will take it. Some people will throw it into the office. Well, what if it's on the floor inside the office? Now, what's your threshold? Or what if it's on the desk? Or what if it's in the top right drawer but not locked? Or what if it's in the bottom drawer which is locked? And people have all these varying thresholds of what they will violate, but somebody will break them all. So, if it's important.
I read about a similar social experiment where it was based on instead of in the office, it was on the street. So the guy was like, well, if I have a penny on the street, will somebody pick it up? No, it's not worth their time. If it's a nickel, will they? Maybe. If it's a dime, yes. If it's a dollar, if it's a $20 bill. But then they started to negate it and balance out the risk reward. So they were saying things like, well, if it's a $10 bill, but it's covered in dog poop, would you pick it up? Or so it's quite the social experiment to see, at what point are you willing to say, okay, it's worth it for me?
Yeah, the kids, I don't know about the kids, but my kids, at least, 5 years ago when they were younger, 10 years ago, they would play this game called Would You Rather? And it was always two horrible choices. Which one would you rather? Yeah. And I want to Kobayashi Maru my way out of anything like that. It's like, I don't want to pick either one.
Yeah,
so don't let me play.
Yeah, like the old interview, question, would you rather be kicked in the, punched in the face or kicked in the nuts? Please give me your choice. It's like, neither, thank you.
It's the old game where this guy walks up to another guy and says, hey, let's play the competition. He says, what's the competition? And he goes, I kick you in the nuts as hard as I can, and then you kick me in the nuts as hard as you can, and whoever lasts the longest on the ground loses. And the guy's like, all right. So the guy winds up and kicks him in the nuts, and he's like, you win. It's over.
Yeah, could see that coming a mile.
That's the abbreviated version.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Glenn, do we have any seething topics? I don't think we should probably do the episode topics. Are there any general topics you want to fire into the mix? I know I'm putting you on the spot there a little bit. So
I don't know. I noticed something on Rob's arm I thought you might ask him about.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Your sleeve. Oh. Tell me about that.
Yeah, thanks for noticing. Thanks for commenting. It's actually fairly new for me. It's only a couple months old, but it is a sleeve I got recently that is based on the cabinet art for Asteroids and Asteroids Deluxe. So you can see a lot of the details that come from that classic arcade game cabinet.
And it actually transitions from one game style to the other.
It does, yeah. Like the explosions here are from the original Asteroids, but then these ones are from Asteroids Deluxe. So, it was a fun exercise. Just my second.
And how many hours?
My second tattoo. So, nothing like going all out.
But your other one's on the same arm.
It is. It's on the inside. A little hard to show. My arm doesn't bend that way. So.
My Steve Austin doll, you can do that.
Yeah, exactly. Or if I was Stretch Armstrong, I could sort of do that.
Well, I think general questions, Dave. I think since we got an electrical engineer here, one of the ones that a lot of folks were asking, they're quite concerned about the power usage of that VAX that you got set up.
Yeah, the VAX isn't
that seems to be a big issue.
It's about 500 to 600.
And Rob, yeah, again, you know the cost of power. So I'm like, what's it cost to leave your computer on, and what's that VAX drawing, and what's the dollar per computing, whatever.
Yeah,
folks
it's becoming a big issue. The cost of computing is a hot topic these days, especially when you talk about the cost of these AI training models and such. But talking about Dave's situation, I would suspect it actually costs more to run the air conditioning to keep his garage cool because of the heat the VAX is throwing off than it's actually costing to running the VAX.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that one. The VAX is maybe 600 watts. The PDP-1183 with all the RLO2s is a little over 1200, I think. And the PDP-1134 is about 900. So, and I don't generally run them all at the same time, but yeah, that'd be a good air conditioning load.
Yeah.
I don't mind in the wintertime. I basically heat the place with equipment
Yeah.
in the wintertime, and then I just top it off with a little space heater. Because there's enough stuff in here to keep it warm with the insulation. But in the summertime, I'm fighting.
Yeah, the data center cooling costs are crazy.
Yeah, so I just saw something. It's interesting you speak about the cost of AI and all that stuff. And I sort of have to pay attention to a lot of these headlines. But in some state somewhere, they said pretty soon that they're going to cross a threshold where the cost of running the AI in that state costs more than all the sort of residential use of electricity. You got any notion on sort of where that stuff is headed?
It is very expensive to train AI models, and that's why we're actually seeing if you sort of check out investments that are being made, there's a lot more interest in nuclear, small modular reactors. You're actually getting tech companies that are investing, buying, or building their own power plants. Just to provide those loads to support training these these AI models. It's literally with ChatGPT, they said that the amount of power it takes their AI models to respond to politeness. So when somebody says thank you, and then it responds, they said that's like 100,000 households worth of electricity, get consumed just by people saying thank you to the AI. Across their entire user base.
Wow.
Well, here's an argument I made in a recent episode that the more I think about it, it sounds more right to me, even though I said it as a joke at the time. And they're talking about leaving on my computers overnight. And they argued, well, I live near a hydro dam, and therefore if I increase my power demand, more water has to flow over the dam, and that's better for the salmon. So I'm kind of a hero.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, as a guy who kind of works in this area, I gotta say, there's pretty strict rules and guidelines about maintaining spawning water flows and levels. So, I think that's a pretty some false hubris there on your part, Dave. I don't think you're saving the salmon. They were perfectly fine.
I feel like I'm doing my part.
Yeah, as long as it makes you feel good, that's what I say.
Oh, what else have we got for questions? There's
I'm going to grab a beverage here, so let's take 2 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't need the bathroom yet, which is really surprising to me.
Oh, that's kind of strange.
What are you drinking tonight, Glenn?
I have one glass with gin and tonic,
Okay.
and another one with iced tea.
Not a T&V, I hope.
And it was
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Iced tea and vodka? No. Mm-hmm. Tea and V.
Iced tea and vodka, T&V.
Tea
Yeah.
and.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I've never. I guess that's kind of a Long Island iced tea,
No.
isn't it? Basically.
Not. I don't know. It's a whole
It's a Long
mix
Island
of different
Triple sec.
alcohols that coincidentally taste like iced tea.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
Bit of a
right. It's
misnomer.
Yeah.
When my son and I were in New York City for the Christie's auction, we were at the hotel bar. Went and sat down, and I forget what I ordered. But it's like Friday at 3, and he orders a Long Island iced tea. And the guy goes, and now I'm going to need to see your ID. It's like no adult at 3 p.m. would order a Long
Definitely
Island.
not. It is a pretty potent beverage, just in terms of the volume of alcohol contained in it. So,
Yeah, if you get a top shelf Long Island at some places I know, it'll be 3 ounce or 3 shots, which can be 1.5 ounces. So that could be, in theory, 4.5 ounces. And it's funny because the guy that I hired to run my software company, this is probably 20 years ago now, when I went out and not interviewed, but tried to sell him on the proposition, I went and we took him to this place called the Fish Cafe, and I had a Long Island, and it didn't really hit me. And I didn't really know anything about Long Islands other than they went down pretty easy and they tasted good. So I had a second one. And at that point, I was obviously buzzed, so I was just like, didn't say anything for the rest of the night at that point because I knew I didn't want to embarrass myself.
What's the right time to order a Long Island iced tea then?
When you're like at a wedding and you want to get drunk really fast and get out of there.
Or before you have to give your speech to the groom. So speaking of stiffness of drinks, it's hot here, and I've turned to the gimlet as my summer drink. I'm really enjoying it. It's like the one I make is like 2.5 ounces of gin of your choice, London Dry preferred, a 1/2 to 3/4 ounce of simple syrup, and a 1/2 ounce of lime juice, and that's it. Well shaken over ice. It's sort of like an.
And do you drink it on your porch?
I mean,
it sounds like a plantation drink to me.
No porch here.
Kizzy, bring
no porch here. 2.5 ounces.
2.5 ounces of gin. We're getting into Long Island iced tea
that's a pretty
territory
stiff
now,
drink for a cocktail, but.
I'm going to call that reference out because I don't think anybody caught that. I just came up with Kizzy fetched me a gimlet, which was, you remember the show Roots in the 70s? Well,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And his daughter was Kizzy.
Did they say, get me a gimlet?
She worked on a plantation.
Oh, okay.
No. They seem to really fit.
Okay.
So.
Kizzy.
That show rocked my world. I mean, I was, 68, so I was 8 years old when it came on. And I knew that slavery existed as a concept, but I'd never seen it. We watched it with one of our kids, or two of our kids, when they were 8 to 10 years old. So about the same age as me. And I don't know if they watched the entire 5-episode thing, but they got as far as Kunta Kinte getting his foot chopped off and stuff like that. So they got the basic gist, and I really think it impacted their view on racial issues compared to the kids who didn't. Not that they're very different, but sometimes I see greater sensitivity towards certain historical issues with the ones that I think that watched Roots as a kid.
For those of you who don't know, curling is a Canadian sport. Where you,
Well, it's actually a Scottish sport.
Where you slide.
Won't all 8 of our curling fans be stoked to hear the reference?
Because you're from Saskatchewan, that's all there is to do in the winter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, that's horrible. I'm going to lose some status points for that on my. Oh yeah. Well, the Hotel Saskatchewan in Regina, the premier hotel. We've got photos of my grandmother there and her friend from 56 or something when they were in town for the big Bonspiel.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all dressed up and fancy.
Just on the news, the shoe shine guy at the Hotel Sask died.
Yeah.
So he's probably been there 40 years or some crazy thing. But
I've never had my shoes shined. I have
at the airport.
On the rare occasions I wear dress shoes, I will often get my shoes shined just because it's so much easier than doing it yourself, and having to have all the stuff.
Well, I got a nice pair of Nike.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a nice pair of Nike Air Jordans that were getting a little dirty. And, the whites on the side were getting a little dingy. And I had cleaned them up with Windex and stuff, but not thoroughly. And so I was in the airport and I had a couple hours to kill and the guy was not doing anything. So he had a sign said athletic shoes, $10 or $20 or whatever it was. And I went and did it. And he spent a solid 10 minutes scrubbing everything with this little brush and cleaners. And they came out pretty much like new. So. For $20, I was stoked.
I wonder if you go with sandals, you can also get a pedicure from the guy.
I don't think so.
I don't know about flying in sandals, man.
I'm not sure you'd want to. Flying in sandals.
I don't know. I don't. People who take their shoes and or socks off while flying, they should be ejected from the airplane, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I've seen them with their feet up on the end wall and row one there.
There was another thing just in the last couple of days. I don't know what the airline was, but there was a lithium battery on board had started to smoke or on fire. And so they're trying to clear the plane. And the stewards are just getting furious with these people who are insisting on grabbing all of their carry-on stuff and getting out. And they're trying to get people out of the plane. It was just... is just a horrible example of. And someone said, "Well, can I take this? Like, what about this? Can I take this bag? Is it okay if I just grab my?" And
kind of a lack of
the plane.
a lack of priority
There's a
there.
little
If
thing
you're
called a
asking
fire.
me, you know.
I will club you with my MacBook
Yeah.
to get out of that airplane.
So
They have they're steel
like
lined,
special-
metal lined bags. And
Wow.
They're like the old
yeah.
bank bags that my dad used to take to
Yeah,
deposits in.
Right. The night deposit
They're
ones.
big enough to hold like a 17-inch laptop. And so you stuff whatever's burning in this thing and zip it up, and it smothers it.
like a burn bag.
Yeah. And they carry them on
Interesting.
airplanes, at least some airplanes.
I think there's also BC Ferries, the local ferry company, not local or whatever, regional or provincial ferry company. There are some electric vehicles that
Yes.
they're no longer allowing on the ferry.
Yeah, Chevy Bolt.
because of some problems with their.
I saw there was a parkade wouldn't allow Chevy Bolts in.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
what
it
the
is
issue is
a
with
challenge, I guess.
So the question for Dave, it's from DIY Dave OK, says, back in the Microsoft heyday, what was a typical workday like in terms of hours or days and collaboration? Long nights?
Yeah, I usually left around 8:30, got into work around 9:30, so I didn't start especially early. Normal day would end around 6, with a 30-minute lunch break, I guess. But when we were busy, you would work much later. You would have a snack at 6 or whatever, and my wife would sometimes come and join me at the cafeteria if it was a long stretch where I was working all week. And grab some free food and then go back to work till 9 or 9:30 or whatever. So
Yeah,
Free food for your
those
wife,
glory
too?
days, I understand. They actually had some pretty decent food as well. It wasn't just like vending machine stuff.
yeah, the food. I don't want to chaff the lunch people that provided our lunch, but the supper food was better because it'd be local vendors. They'd bring in the Thai restaurant to do a dinner or whatever for the dev team, that kind of thing. There was a lot of pizza. Don't get me wrong, but occasionally we got nicer stuff. So.
That's because you guys like pizza.
Yeah, I used to eat a lot of the dollar pizza that we had there. So we used to rate them in the number of napkins that you could stack on top and soak through.
And then what about the like Death March stuff? Like that's just
Yeah, that's as
4/7
needed.
kind of stuff? Or?
And, you'll wind up working 12-hour days for a long stretch, which will suck. And some days will be longer. Some, maybe on weekends you get out shorter, 8-hour days.
And what's a long stretch for like 4 or 5 weeks as you're pushing towards this?
I don't
Or
remember,
stretch longer than that?
long days consistent going on more than 2 or 3 weeks at a time. But there would be stretches of a couple of months where it was very common to work long days as you approach a beta, that kind of thing. So you may not be doing it every day, but there's lots of days you do.
And what about for you, Robert, your role in cybersecurity? I mean, that stuff's 24/7, right? I mean, you're with a power utility, it's 24/7. Your role isn't 24/7, but
Let's just say my phone
what's a
never gets
typical
turned
workday at
off.
your level?
So that gives you some perspective just in terms of being reachable 24/7. No, I love my job in the role I have. I work.
Yeah.
I think a pretty healthy day. 8 to 9 hours. The problem is I love the subject. I'm like such a cybersecurity geek. So not only do I do it at work, but when I get up in the morning, I'm listening to my cybersecurity podcast, and later in the evening, I'm reading about cybersecurity research, and so it becomes a more all-consuming thing that bleeds out into the real world. Just because it really interests me. So and I like it. So.
now Dave is the blinking lights dude, and I can't help but notice, and maybe it'll show up
Oh,
here.
yeah,
You've
I
got
don't
that
know if
little
you can
blinking
see it
light
or
to your
not.
left there too.
Let's see if I can turn my
Care to
camera
explain
a little
that
bit.
bad boy?
Actually, then you can start to see some my synthesizer rack in the background.
Chords and stuff.
But this is actually I'll move over here. This is based on a product that used to be called the Tix clock. I designed and 3D printed this one myself, but each segment is displaying a random number of digits that reflects the time. So I'm trying to read this. There you go, 808, and the little.
But it keeps changing, so you get different 8s along
Yeah,
the way,
the pattern shifts.
809.
809. The
Oh, it's
pattern shifts
809
every
now.
10 seconds, and the colors I've got on a slow color morph cycle. So it's all ESP32.
Was that part of the original Tix design clock, or that's a modification that you made based on the
This
sort
was
of
built from
front
scratch based on the concept of
Okay.
the Tix clock.
Right.
So it's all, yeah.
And so you 3D printed all the bits and pieces, and you also did the code for the lights that run it. Is that so? What do you have?
Your friendly neighborhood
machine
ESP32? You know, one of Dave's favorite chips.
Can't go wrong. Well, thanks for joining me out here in the shop tonight, Rob and Glenn. I appreciate your expertise on the subject matter. And Glenn, thanks for helping out. We'll see you next time here in Dave's Attic.